Participation remained voluntary, with 87.4% of able-bodied POWs choosing to work according to War Department records. Pay scales adhered to Geneva Convention standards, identical to American enlisted base pay minus deductions for housing and food. POWs could decline specific assignments, request transfers between work details, and receive skill-specific training. This autonomy contradicted the rigid command structure they had experienced in the Wehrmacht, where refusal of assignments brought severe punishment. "The Americans allow me to volunteer for tasks matching my civilian skills," wrote former mechanic Carl Weber to his brother in Stuttgart. "I maintained farm equipment rather than digging ditches because I demonstrated mechanical knowledge. In the Wehrmacht, my university degree meant nothing when officers needed latrine diggers." This merit-based assignment process revealed the American system's practicality compared to the class-conscious German military, where aristocratic lineage often outweighed competence in determining leadership. Educational opportunities within camps further undermined Nazi class ideology. At Camp Shelby, Mississippi, former Volksschule graduates studied alongside university-educated officers in voluntary courses taught by fellow prisoners with academic credentials. Sergeant Major Wilhelm Keller, son of a factory worker who had risen through Wehrmacht ranks through combat performance, attended English classes alongside Baron von Fritsch, a cavalry officer whose commission stemmed from family connections. The Baron received no preferential treatment, a leveling that contradicted every principle of German military stratification. Statistical evidence confirmed this meritocratic transformation. War Department records document 109,785 prisoners participating in educational programs by December 1944. Course offerings included vocational training, carpentry, mechanics, agriculture, languages, mathematics, engineering, and business management. Former rifleman Hans Müller, who had abandoned apprenticeship when drafted at age 18, completed certification in electrical wiring, skills unavailable to him in Germany's class-restricted educational system. In America, he wrote in his journal, "They ask what I can learn, not what my father did." Camp administration reinforced this revelation. American authorities established self-governance systems within compounds, allowing prisoners to elect representatives, an unthinkable democratic exercise for men accustomed to absolute command hierarchy. At Camp Breckenridge, Kentucky, prisoners established internal courts for minor infractions, managed recreational activities, and organized cultural events without officer domination. Former Hitler Youth leader Ernst Wagner noted with astonishment, "Men follow barracks leaders they respect rather than fear. The system functions without constant threats of punishment." The breaking of class barriers extended to recreational opportunities. Officer privileges, tennis courts, musical instruments, private rooms had defined Wehrmacht culture. In American camps, enlisted men accessed the same facilities as their former superiors. At Fort McClellan, Alabama, company clerk Peter Schmidt played soccer alongside Colonel Werner von Hafeften, an aristocrat who previously wouldn't have acknowledged his existence. "On the field, skill matters more than rank," Schmidt wrote to his family. This equality seems American rather than German, yet it produces better results. By 1945, prisoner productivity statistics revealed the effectiveness of this meritocratic approach. POW labor produced 36 million man-days of agricultural work, harvested 25% of the cotton crop in Arkansas, and maintained essential food production despite American labor shortages. The voluntary system, paying equal wages for equal work regardless of previous rank or social standing, outperformed the coercive models these men had experienced in their own military. November 1944, Camp Shelby, Mississippi. Feldwebel Heinrich Müller reread his wife's letter, its contents transforming his understanding of the war. "The bombs fall nightly on Hamburg," Greta wrote. Bread ration reduced again to 200 grams daily. Children sent to countryside. Winter approaches without coal. Müller glanced at his dinner tray. Roast pork, potatoes, green beans, apple pie, then back at the thin paper that had traversed the Atlantic through Red Cross channels. The cognitive dissonance struck him physically. While he gained 12 pounds in American captivity, his family faced starvation in the supposed safety of the fatherland. Censored but revealing correspondence flowed between 375,000 German prisoners and their families throughout occupied Europe. Military intelligence officers monitoring this mail noted a profound shift in tone by late 1944. Early letters had contained reassurances that American mistreatment rumors were false. Later communication revealed a more devastating truth. Prisoners lived better than German civilians. The discovery that American enemies received treatment superior to German families corroded Nazi ideological foundations more effectively than any propaganda. "Do not send packages," wrote Corporal Werner Schmidt to his parents in Dresden. "Save what little you have. We receive sufficient food here." This reversal of expected prisoner needs contradicted every German cultural assumption. In previous wars, families had sacrificed to send provisions to captured soldiers. Now, Army postal records documented the opposite. 11,783 packages sent from German POWs to their families in the first quarter of 1945 alone. The statistical evidence proved irrefutable. 96% of German prisoners had better nutrition than their own children. The psychological impact intensified when prisoners received photographs from home. Obergefreiter Karl Wagner, who had believed in eventual German victory, received an image of his bombed Munich apartment building in February 1945. The American censor had allowed this stark evidence to pass through, a transparency unimaginable in German military mail systems where negative information was routinely suppressed. "I sleep in a heated barracks while you shelter in rubble," Wagner wrote back. "This war has betrayed us all." Military intelligence recorded his subsequent request to join an anti-Nazi discussion group within the camp. Communication monitoring revealed accelerating disillusionment. Army records from Camp Concordia, Kansas, documented a 73% increase in critical references to Nazi leadership between January and April 1945. Prisoners who received news of civilian bombing deaths increasingly questioned the purpose of continued fighting. "For what cause do German children starve while American prisoners eat?" wrote Lieutenant Karl Hauptmann, formerly a dedicated National Socialist. "The true enemy of Germany may not be who we were told." Perhaps most devastating was the contrast in medical information. Former Wehrmacht medic Joseph Klein received a letter describing his daughter's untreated diphtheria due to medication shortages in Berlin. He worked in the camp hospital where penicillin was standardized treatment for all infections. "I distribute more antibiotics to fellow prisoners weekly than my entire battalion received on the Eastern Front," he noted in a letter that military censors flagged as potentially demoralizing if it reached Germany. As Allied forces advanced into Germany in spring 1945, the final psychological rupture occurred. Red Cross reports allowed prisoners to track the destruction of their hometowns. War Department records show that when prisoners at Camp Breckinridge, Kentucky learned of Dresden's bombing, 47 men removed Nazi insignia from their uniforms within 24 hours. The collapse of ideological conviction accelerated as communication confirmed Germany's devastation contrasted with their own safety and comfort. By May 1945, with Germany's surrender, the mail system documented complete transformation. Sergeant Major Wilhelm Kruger, once a fervent party member, wrote to his sister in Bavaria, "The Americans feed their prisoners better than our army fed its heroes. They treat their enemies with more humanity than our leaders showed their own people. I have lived in both worlds now, and can no longer believe what we were told." Military intelligence archived his letter as representative of widespread sentiment among the prisoners who had experienced the final devastating revelation: their enemy had treated them better than their own army ever had. June 1947. Frankfurt am Main, Germany. Former Hauptmann Werner Braun stepped off the train into a devastated homeland. After 3 years at Fort Robinson, Nebraska, his immaculate American-issued civilian suit and healthy appearance immediately marked him as a returnee from U.S. captivity. While German civilians who had endured Allied bombing campaigns wore patched clothing and showed signs of malnutrition, Braun carried 25 additional pounds and a profound ideological transformation. "Our leaders told us Americans would enslave or execute us as prisoners," he told a U.S. Army documentation team conducting repatriation interviews. "Instead, they treated us better than our own army." This truth must be acknowledged if Germany hopes to rebuild. Between 1945 and 1947, approximately 372,000 German POWs returned to a shattered nation, carrying evidence of American humanitarian treatment in their healthy bodies and transformed mindsets. U.S. Army records documented that 87.3% of returned prisoners weighed more upon repatriation than at capture. This physical reality created immediate credibility when former POWs contradicted lingering Nazi propaganda about American brutality. The evidence was visible. Former prisoners who had received regulated diets, proper medical care, and educational opportunities appeared as living refutations of fascist ideology. The contrast proved especially stark in the Soviet occupation zone. Feldwebel Heinrich Müller, released from Camp Shelby, Mississippi in 1946, reunited with his brother Johann, who had been held in Soviet captivity. While Heinrich returned 18 pounds heavier than when captured, Johann had lost 42 pounds and suffered from untreated tuberculosis. The Americans fed their enemies, Johann later recalled. The Soviets barely kept us alive. This fraternal comparison, replicated across thousands of families, provided irrefutable evidence that American humanitarian treatment had exceeded not only German military standards but also those of other Allied powers. Former POWs rapidly became influential in post-war reconstruction. Klaus Mittermeier, the captured battalion surgeon who had witnessed American medical standards, helped establish West Germany's new military medical system in 1955. His medical manuals explicitly incorporated American treatment protocols he had observed in captivity. The Wehrmacht prioritized combat effectiveness over individual welfare, he wrote in a 1957 Bundeswehr training document. Our new military must value each soldier's health as the Americans did, even for enemies. Statistical studies confirmed the former prisoners' impact on democratization. A 1962 University of Munich survey found that 71.4% of former US-held POWs supported democratic institutions compared to 47.8% of veterans without American captivity experience. The study concluded, direct observation of American humanitarian treatment provided more effective democratic re-education than any formal propaganda program. The 38,000 POWs who received formal education in camp programs showed even higher democratic participation rates. 83.6% regularly voted in elections, a civic engagement level exceeding the general population. Perhaps most significant was their influence on West Germany's military reformation. When the Bundeswehr formed in 1955, former POWs constituted 24% of its officer corps and 37% of non-commissioned officers. These men implemented American-inspired reforms, including improved living standards, medical care, and merit-based advancement. General Günther Kiesling, who spent 2 years at Camp Breckinridge, Kentucky, later wrote, "We built Germany's new military on principles first witnessed in American prison camps: human dignity, fair treatment, and respect for individual rights." The contrast between East and West German development further validated the POW experience. In the Soviet zone, returned prisoners who spoke positively about American treatment faced persecution. In Western occupation zones, their testimony became foundational to rebuilding efforts. By 1960, approximately 8,700 former US-held POWs held elected offices across West Germany, from village councils to the Bundestag. Their consistent message that humanitarian treatment had proven more powerful than punishment shaped Germany's post-war identity. Professor Arnold Kramer, leading historian of the POW experience, concluded in his definitive 1979 study, "The most effective weapon in America's ideological arsenal proved to be humanitarian treatment of enemy prisoners." Men who experienced captivity, where they received better care than in their own military, became permanent advocates for the democratic system that produced such treatment. Germany's post-war transformation owes more to this lived experience than to any formal denazification program. December 1943. Fort Robinson, Nebraska. The German officer stepped off the train into a shocking reality. At -5 degrees Fahrenheit, the winter air bit through his uniform as military police escorted him toward warm barracks, not the prison cells Nazi propaganda had promised. Hauptmann Werner Braun, captured at Kasserine Pass 10 months earlier, had prepared for American brutality. Instead, within 30 minutes of arrival, he received hot coffee, a wool blanket, and systematic medical examination by American doctors. The incongruity stunned him. After 18 months commanding an artillery battery, where his own men received intermittent rations and minimal medical care, Braun now watched American efficiency provide 3,100 calories daily to enemy prisoners. His first meal, beef stew, fresh bread, coffee with sugar and milk, exceeded what his men had received before major operations in North Africa. Across America that winter, 375,683 German prisoners of war encountered similar disorienting generosity. They arrived expecting barbaric treatment from mongrelized Americans as described by Reich propaganda. Instead, they found precisely measured adherence to Geneva Convention standards, 3,000 plus daily calories, weekly medical inspections, heated barracks with 40 square feet per prisoner. They examined my teeth and gave me new eyeglasses. Braun wrote in a letter home, carefully worded to past censors. The food is regular and substantial. This understated assessment masked his private shock documented later in his diary. Americans feed their prisoners better than Wehrmacht feeds its soldiers. This cannot be wartime deception. Fort Robinson's 3,000 prisoners occupied converted cavalry barracks, wooden structures with central heating, indoor plumbing, and electricity. Each man received 2 wool blankets, 1 mattress, changes of clothing, soap, and toiletries. Military records confirm standard issue of 2 blankets, 72, 1 mattress, 30 got 76, 2 uniform sets, 2 underwear sets per prisoner, upon processing. The psychological impact began immediately. Lieutenant Carl Schmidt, former Hitler Youth leader, recorded in his diary, "Americans waste more food than our frontline units receive. Today's breakfast, eggs, potatoes, bread with butter, coffee with real milk. Portions larger than officer rations in Afrika Korps." U.S. Army processing centers methodically documented prisoner condition upon arrival. Records show 62% of German POWs arrived underweight by American military standards, 38% showed signs of nutritional deficiency, 14% required immediate dental intervention. Within 90 days, average weight gain reached 12 pounds per prisoner. Each arrival underwent thorough medical examination, height, weight, dental inspection, vision testing, tuberculosis screening, inoculations against typhoid and smallpox. The care exceeded what many had received throughout their military service. The first letters home, heavily censored but revealing, began the transformation. "Conditions here are correct and proper," wrote Feldwebel Hans Müller to his wife in Hamburg. "You need not worry." Between the lines lay an unspeakable truth. American enemies ate better than German heroes. The first molar extraction in February 1944 transformed Feldwebel Ernst Kramer's understanding of America. After enduring throbbing pain for 8 months on the North African front, where German field surgeons prioritized only life-threatening wounds, Kramer entered the Fort Campbell Dental Clinic expecting crude treatment. Instead, he received Novocaine injection, precise extraction, antibiotics, and codeine for pain. Standard American protocol for all patients regardless of nationality. "I waited in line behind American soldiers," Kramer later wrote to his brother, a Wehrmacht medic. "They used the same instruments, the same medications for German prisoners as for their own men." This medical equality contradicted everything Nazi ideology had taught about American inferiority and brutality. U.S. Army Medical Corps records document that between 1943 to 1945, German POWs received 611,082 dental procedures, 18,469 surgeries, and 123,506 specialist consultations, treatments unavailable to most German civilians and many frontline soldiers. At Camp Breckenridge, Kentucky, POW Horst Weinmann received a complete denture fitting after losing teeth to scurvy, during the Russian campaign. The prosthetic cost the American government $37.42, $574 in 2023 dollars, more than a Wehrmacht conscript's monthly pay. German medical officers, imprisoned alongside their men, witnessed the disparity most acutely. Dr. Klaus Mittermeier, captured battalion surgeon, recorded in his medical journal, "American base hospitals provide surgical equipment I requested for 3 years without receiving. Single-use sterile supplies, abundant antibiotics, X-ray machines in every medical facility. We struggled for morphine at Stalingrad, while Americans discard half-used vials according to procedure." Statistical evidence compiled by the International Red Cross confirmed this medical disparity. German military hospitals in 1943 averaged 1 doctor per 400 wounded, while American POW camps maintained 1 physician per 173 prisoners. Wehrmacht surgeons performed amputations without anesthesia as standard practice by 1944, while American doctors provided full surgical protocols for prisoners requiring amputation. Camp Atterbury, Indiana, maintained a dedicated 60-bed hospital exclusively for its 3,000 German POWs, staffed by American personnel and supplemented by captured German medical officers. Physical therapy, previously available only to German officers, became standard for all injured prisoners. Luftwaffe pilot Otto Hermann, who had fractured both legs during ejection, underwent 12 weeks of rehabilitation. "In Germany, I would have received crutches and been returned to duty," he noted in a censored letter. "Here they insist I regain full function before work assignment." The transformation manifested physically. American quartermaster records tracked average prisoner weight gain of 17.5 pounds during the first 6 months of captivity. Vitamin deficiencies that plagued the Wehrmacht, scurvy, beriberi, night blindness, disappeared under American diets supplemented with fruit juice, fortified milk, and fresh vegetables. Medical inspection records from Camp Shelby, Mississippi noted prisoner skin conditions, dental problems, and minor infections resolve rapidly under standard care protocols. Most revealing were the tuberculosis statistics. Germany's military displayed 4.2% active TB rates in 1944, while German POWs in America showed rates declining from 1.8% at capture to 0.8% after 6 months captivity. The U.S. Army administered more than 350,000 chest X-rays to prisoners, identifying and isolating cases before they spread. Captain Wilhelm Krauss, Wehrmacht medical officer captured at Anzio, summed up the revelation in his personal journal, "I begin to question everything. We called ourselves the master race while failing to provide basic care to our soldiers. Americans offer comprehensive treatment to their enemies. Which system truly values human life?" Spring 1944. Camp Concordia, Kansas. German POWs woke each morning in heated wooden barracks designed according to American military specifications, 50 square feet per man compared to the 15 square feet standard in German field accommodations. Each prisoner slept on a regulation mattress elevated 18 inches from the floor on metal bed frames, stark contrast to the frozen ground that had served as bedding during the Russian winter campaign, where frostbite claimed more casualties than Soviet bullets. Staff Sergeant Kurt Weber, veteran of Stalingrad, noted in his journal, "The barracks are clean, dry, and warm. We have hot water for washing daily." This simple dignity was fantasy on the Eastern Front, where we went weeks without removing boots or changing clothes. Army records confirm that Camp Concordia maintained 6 shower buildings with 48 showerheads, providing hot water 3 times weekly, a standard maintained even during water conservation efforts on the American home front. The daily routine provided structure alien to combat veterans. Réveil at 6 a.m., breakfast at 7 o'clock, work assignments from 8:30 to 4:30 with a lunch break, dinner at 6 o'clock, free time until lights out at 10 p.m. Sundays remained work-free with religious services offered by both Protestant and Catholic chaplains. Corporal Dieter Müller wrote home, "We receive 3 complete meals daily, served at the same times. In Russia we sometimes went 3 days without hot food during advances. The consistency itself feels like luxury." American camps maintained mess halls where prisoners received the same caloric allocation as American garrison troops, 3,560 daily calories according to Quartermaster Corps documentation. By comparison, German frontline rations had been reduced to 2,200 calories by 1943, with rear echelon troops receiving 1,800. POWs dining on roast beef, potatoes, and fruit cobbler knew their families in Germany received 1,100 calories through civilian rationing. The contrast in sanitation proved equally revealing. Camp Clinton, Mississippi, maintained 12 latrine buildings with modern plumbing for its 3,000 prisoners, ratio of 1 toilet per 25 men. Wehrmacht field regulations considered 1 slit trench per 100 men adequate. Hot water, soap, and laundry facilities became daily expectations rather than unattainable luxuries. Former Wehrmacht medic Joseph Klein observed more men died from disease than combat in North Africa. Here, the Americans prevent illness through basic cleanliness that our supply system could never maintain. Communication privileges contradicted Nazi warnings about isolation. POWs could send 2 letters and 4 postcards monthly. Red Cross packages arrived regularly, unthinkable reliability compared to German military mail that often failed to reach units during major operations. Lieutenant Hans Vogel received a letter from his wife in Munich within 17 days, faster than Field Post had delivered when he served in France. The camp newspapers, printed in German, provided uncensored war news, contrary to Wehrmacht practice of filtering information. When Allied forces landed at Normandy, prisoners read accurate accounts rather than propaganda. Many initially dismissed these reports as psychological warfare until BBC broadcasts confirmed details. Captain Gerhard Fischer wrote in his diary, "We receive more honest information as prisoners than we did as officers." The American willingness to share bad news alongside victories suggests confidence we never possessed. Religious freedom revealed another contradiction to Nazi ideology. Chaplains conducted services without political oversight, while religious practice in the Wehrmacht had become increasingly restricted. Jewish chaplains visited Jewish German POWs who had concealed their heritage while serving. Protestant and Catholic services proceeded without Hitler's mandatory prayers that had become standard in German military chapels. July 1944. Camp Aliceville, Alabama. Former Wehrmacht infantry Private Johann Schmidt picked cotton alongside American farmers, earning 80 cents daily, a wage deposited directly to his camp account. After 10 hours, under the southern sun, he returned to purchase cigarettes and chocolate from the camp canteen. The simple transaction revealed an economic reality that contradicted his military experience. In 3 weeks of voluntary labor, Schmidt earned more disposable income than during 6 months as a German soldier, where his monthly wage of 21 Reichsmarks barely covered personal necessities. The American work program operated on principles incomprehensible within the German military hierarchy.